Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday morning. Welcome to afternoon, I guess. Welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmeelk, joined as always on every Thursday by Matthew Citak, taking your calls at 201-939-4513. Giants-Eagles, we're here. Really important game for the Giants here, Matt. 2-4. Excuse me, I felt that coming for the last 15 seconds. 2-4. You don't want to go to 2-5, but even a bigger deal to me than dropping to 2-5 would be dropping to 0-3 in the division. That's something that's very difficult to come back from, especially in what's going to be a tight division. And right now, it doesn't look great for a wild card team coming out of the NFC East, which means you have to win the division. And what's the first tiebreaker? Division record. So really essential to walk out of this game with a win, given the Giants' first two losses in the division to the Commanders and to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that the wild card is going to be tough. I mean, right now, the worst team in the NFC North is 4-2. So that division looks like it could be taking, at the very least, 2, if not all 3 wild card spots.
Now, once those teams start playing each other,
for sure, those records,
they'll flatten.
Yes, definitely. But that is looking, like, at least in the NFC, like the best division, at least through the first six games of the season.
Falcons and Bucks look pretty good, right, in the NFC South.
Yeah, so
and then you have the Niners and there's other teams in the West that have done stuff. So
definitely. So if for the Giants' playoff hopes, it's at least as of now, you got to be looking towards the division, as you mentioned. Coming back from 0-3 in the division, that it's just very tough. And we've spoken, the last couple of weeks about how this kind of feels like the most wide open the NFC East has been, at least in the last few years. I mean, I think back to, the 2020 season when the Washington won the division at 7-9, I believe. Came down to that very last Week 17 game. It kind of has similar feelings to that. I don't think the winner of the division is going to be under 500 again, but just in terms of how wide open the division really is. I mean, the Giants, they're 2-4, and yet they're 2 games out of the division lead. They are still very much in it, but it's going to start. Their playoff hopes are going to start with a win against the Eagles on Sunday. If they fall to Philadelphia, as you mentioned, it's just 0-3 is a very tough hole to climb out of, and it's also one loss against each of the 3 division opponents. So it already puts them behind the 8 ball.
Which means you can't go 2-0 against any of the teams you could have a tiebreaker
Exactly.
against.
So it's a big game on Sunday, no doubt about it.
It is. All right, let's get into the opponent here. This is what we generally do on these Thursday shows. No other real big news today. We'll keep an eye on Dan Salamone. He'll be out there listening to Brian Dable's walk by to see if anything comes out of that. We'll have Paul Dottino. He's here as well. We will keep an eye on their Twitter feeds to make sure nothing else is said. I apologize for starting a few minutes late today. I had to talk to Shane Bowen and Mike Kafka after their media availability. It took me a second to get down here. I apologize for that. But we're rolling. And the Eagles are a team, Matt, that honestly, I haven't quite figured out. They're very up and down week to week. One week they look good, one week they don't. They're still immensely talented. When we did our, team rankings and position rankings per team in the division, the Eagles finished, I think, on top of all of our boards in terms of just their talent. But they just haven't been able to put it together yet. Now, part of that on offense, and we'll start there, I think, is the fact that A.J. Brown's only played in 2 games, so he's missed 3. Yep. Devontae Smith's missed a game with a concussion as well. Lane Johnson missed a couple of games along the way. So there are some issues, and you say, okay, I understand. But even so, it just doesn't look like whatever they've tried to do with Kellen Moore bringing him in, the offense still looks very similar to what it's been with Jalen Hurts at quarterback. You haven't seen it get to the next level yet. And again, maybe with more health in these guys together, it will at some point. But the offense, even with Saquon Barkley there, it just doesn't look like it's hitting on all cylinders quite yet.
Yeah, you brought up Jalen Hurts. I mean, through 5 games, I feel like this has got to be his worst start to a season, at least in the last couple of years. I mean,
since he broke out, yes.
Yeah, since he broke out as this, MVP discussion, or I shouldn't say MVP discussion, but one of the top, however many you want to call it.
He was in the MVP discussion a couple of years ago. That's fair.
Yeah, okay. One of the top quarterbacks in the league. This has got to be, I think, honestly, his roughest start to a season. He just hasn't looked like that great quarterback that we've seen in years past. I mean, through 5 games, and again, you mentioned, obviously, without A.J. Brown, that is a big hit to the Eagles offense. And then you also take out Devontae Smith for I don't know if it was 1 or 2 games.
One game with the concussion.
One
yep.
game.
Mm-hmm.
That's another tough blow. But he has 6 touchdown passes in 5 games, 4 interceptions, and he's averaging under 4 yards per carry while running the ball. I've looked it up before. He has the 3rd most carries of any quarterback in the NFL behind only Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels. But he's averaging under 4 yards per carry while those other 2 are thriving when they're running with the football. And he's
I'm
also
surprised he has more than Daniel Jones carry-wise, to be honest with you. That's
he
interesting.
beat Daniel by not much, but by a few. And he also has 5 fumbles, not all of which were lost, but 5 fumbles and 4 interceptions. That's 9 at least turnover-worthy plays in only 5 games because they already had their bye. He's really just, not gotten off to a start that I think many people, especially in Philadelphia, probably expected him to. And as you mentioned, especially with Kellen Moore coming in, this offense had very high expectations. And the rushing attack has been great. But honestly, that's pretty much been mostly Saquon Barkley, who he has been fantastic for the Eagles. Other than this last game against the Browns, in which clearly the Browns went into the game with the priority of shutting down Saquon, and, they did. They did a great job against him. Other than that one game, Saquon has been just fantastic. There's just no way around it. I mean, in 2 of his 5 games this season, averaged over 8 yards per carry. That's nuts. Against Tampa Bay and New Orleans. Tampa Bay defense, the run defense, the last couple of years at least, has been pretty strong. And the Saints, are considered a top, maybe 10 defense in the NFL. At least the last couple of years they have. And he averaged over 8 yards per carry against both of them, which is insane. And then in the first 2 games, he averaged, 4.3 and 4.5 yards per carry. He's got over 116 yards from scrimmage in 4 of 5 games, with the one exception being the Browns game. So far for the Philadelphia, Saquon has been all that they could have hoped for when they signed him this offseason.
Yeah,
and that is a big reason why the rushing attack has been so great for Philly.
Yeah, Saquon is a 51% success rate, which means he either gets half the yards to go on 1st or 2nd down, or all the yards on 3rd or 4th down. Eagles overall 4th on EPA per rush, 11th in success rate. So they've been good in those situations. But I think Saquon's really enjoying running behind probably the best offensive line he's ever run behind.
Yep.
And that's a big part of this. So I'm going to throw some advanced PFF numbers at you because I found them interesting when I looked at it during the week.
Let's hear it.
So 50 qualifying running backs. I think I put the limit at 25 carries this year, or was it 50? I think it was 25 carries. So of 50 qualifying running backs this year, this is no quarterbacks, this is just running backs. Missed tackles forced per rushing attempt, 41st out of 50 running backs. 29th out of 50 running backs in terms of yards after contact per attempt. That's in the bottom half. 8th in the NFL in yards before contact per attempt. So he's getting, and again, it's not taking away from Saquon. He's been great, to your point. Getting a lot of help from not getting touched in the backfield, much less than he was with the Giants, needless to say, over his 6-year career here. But we aren't getting quite as much of the tackle breaking, yards after contact, I think, as we got earlier in his career when he was here with the Giants. And look, he's getting older. That's what happens. You don't break as many tackles. You don't do as many of those things as you get older. So I find it interesting, like his more missed tackles forced per rushing attempt are much lower than Devin Singletary.
I was going to say, I don't want to compare the two.
Singletary, I think, is 3rd or 4th right now.
Singletary is among the leaders in the NFL in that category.
So I just found it interesting. So I think he's getting a lot of help from that offensive line. And I think you're seeing part of that, which is, again, why you don't want to sign running backs to second contracts into their 30s, right? You're seeing part of that decline happen in terms of forcing mixed tackles, yards after contact. Doesn't mean he's still not a top back. Doesn't mean he's still not super productive, that he's not a huge focus for the Giants. But I thought some of those analytics were interesting when you went under the hood a little bit on his rushing yards.
Yeah, definitely. And I will say another big part of his game that hasn't really been there this year, which kind of was, I guess, expected when he went to Philly, was he hasn't really done much in the passing game.
He had that one wheel route, right? Deep
I was
going to
say,
early.
In the Week 1 game against the Packers, he had that fantastic wheel route catch for a touchdown. That was great. Outside of that one play, he really has not done much. So that was I believe that was the 18-yard touchdown catch in Week 1. He has 14 catches for 92 yards and the 1 touchdown on the season. So you take out that one play, you're talking 13 catches for 74 yards and no touchdowns across 4 games. And a big part of that obviously is because in years past, playing with Daniel Jones or whatever quarterback for the Giants, he would get a lot of dump offs. If whatever routes the receivers were running weren't there, they would look towards Saquon, throw it off to him, and he'd gain, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever yards. That doesn't really happen as much with the Eagles because Jalen Hurts, if he's in that situation, his first instinct is, I'm going to tuck the ball and run. Evidenced by his, I think it's 56 rush attempts through 5 games, which again, third most in the NFL among quarterbacks. So yeah, Saquon's his pass catching abilities haven't really been utilized by the Eagles so much yet, at least since that week 1 game.
And Hurts, a lot of go balls, a lot of crossing routes, not a lot of tight window timing stuff out of him. He holds the ball very long. I had that written down. 5th highest average time to throw, over 3 seconds among qualifying quarterbacks, so he will hold the football. He struggled a lot against the blitz last year, but he's been much better this year. So 106.8 quarterback rating versus the blitz this year versus just 75 last year. So he's gotten much better against the blitz. That's been one change with Kellen Moore there. In the 2 games against the Giants last year, the Giants blitzed him 68% of the time in both games. We've seen other teams do that too. But he's been better, again, versus the blitz this year. So I'm not sure that's going to be that easy button that you can push against him. And their weapons, Matt, obviously, I was thinking this week, maybe you can copy some of last week's approach against the Bengals, who also have an awesome wide receiver duo. In fact, you can argue these are probably the 2 best duos in the league. Yep. Brown, Smith, Higgins, Chase. But I don't think it's quite going to work that way. I talked to Cordell Flott yesterday, and I asked him, how the idea come about to put you on Chase, put a safety over the top for help, and then man up Banks on Higgins. He goes,
the old Belichick way.
Correct. Put your number 2 guy in the number 1 and put double team help. Correct. Exactly right. He said, well, that was really based on their body types. Higgins is a much bigger, more physical wide receiver, so they felt better about Banks on him. Chase, more of a normal-sized wide receiver, put Flott on him. Here's the problem. If you look at the Eagles, their number 1 wide receiver is also their big-bodied receiver. Yeah. A.J. Brown is the 220-pound guy that's 6'2", whatever he is, and I don't want to see Cordell Flott have to try to tackle. I think he can cover him okay, but I'm not seeing him try to tackle A.J. Brown in the open field.
I mean, A.J. Brown, I think, has 40 to 50 pounds of pure muscle over Cordell Flott.
Correct. Absolutely. So I don't think you can do, all right, let's put Flott on A.J. Brown, put a safety over the top, and then put Deontay Banks on Devontae Smith. I don't think that is the plan you're looking for because of the size differential with Flott and Brown. So I'm curious to see how they approach it this week. I think Banks is on Brown, but I don't think you can leave him on an island there. I think you got to leave a lot of help. I think you probably play more zone than man in a game like this to try to control those 2 guys, keep them in front of you. They did not play a lot of man either against the Bengals last week. When they did, that's how they did it with the safety alignment and the matchup. So controlling those 2 guys, obviously, if you can do what you did last week, where you look at the end of the game and Higgins and Chase combined for over 150 receiving yards, they combined for, I think, 13 catches or something like that. But other than that one Jamar Chase deep pass over the top when Tyler Newman vacated that side of the field on the scramble and you left him in man-on-man coverage, and I guess that one play where Higgins broke a tackle and ran after the catch for 20 yards, there were no back-breaking plays from those 2 wide receivers. They got their yards, but you controlled them. They didn't wreck the game. Figure out a way to prevent these 2 Eagles wide receivers from wrecking the game this week.
Yeah, that is definitely going to be a big priority for the defense, and I think a great way to do that, and this is going to be the theme pretty much every week, is going to be getting pressure on Jalen Hurts.
You hit it.
I mean, we've spoken, how that the defense has been playing really great football so far this year, other than week 1. And even week 1, they weren't terrible. But since week 2 game, this defense has really stepped up in a very big way. The pass rush has been the key, and we knew this was going to be the strength of the Giants defense, or we thought it would be the strength of the Giants defense coming into the year, and so far it's it's lived up to the billing. I mean, the 26 sacks lead the NFL, 4 more than any other team. I believe ESPN Analytics has them as the 5th best pass rush win rate in the NFL, which is obviously great as well. So they're getting the stats, the splash plays, but also the underlying metrics are showing that they're also finding success, more overall. It's not just those splash plays. But yeah, it's going to be very important to get pressure on Jalen Hurts. I mean, I feel like I give these numbers to every opposing quarterback.
No, you
each
should.
Thursday,
No,
but,
I mean, they're important numbers. You should.
Yeah, but Jalen Hurts' numbers, when he's getting no pressure, he's completed 77.6% of his passes for 837 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, passer rating of 100.8, and 7.8 yards per attempt. Now, when he is pressured, that 77.6 completion percentage drops all the way down to 46%. He's completed 23 of 50 passes when pressured, 357 yards, 3 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions as well, 73.5 passer rating.
So I'm gonna do quick back of the napkin math here for you, Citak. So 83 completions with no pressure for 837 yards. That's about 10 yards per catch.
Yep.
When under pressure, 23 completions for 357 yards. That's probably about 15 yards per catch, right? Doing like quick back of the napkin math there. So that's about 15 yards per catch. So when he gets blitzed and when they come after him, his hack, for lack of a better term, his cheat code, chuck it deep to A.J. Brown, let the dude make a play.
Yeah.
That's why it's important, I think, to pressure with 4.
Yes.
Get home with 4. You can keep your safeties over the top. So that hack is gone. If you have a safety sitting over the top on A.J. Brown, you can't throw it deep to him. That's going to get picked. I don't care how good A.J. Brown is. And here's the bigger issue to compound this, was I think it kind of brings it together full circle here. Lane Johnson's back. He's been unbelievable, by the way. Just allowed 1 pressure all year, according to Pro Football Focus. He's been great. But Jordan Mailata, who frankly been playing at an all-pro level this year, he's out for a while, I think, with a hamstring. Whenever a guy comes out post-game on crutches because of a hamstring injury, it's probably a pretty serious hamstring
Nick
injury.
Sirianni said earlier this week that he's going to be out for some time. And he said at least a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So he's definitely not playing this Sunday.
He is not. And Fred Johnson, who is their swing tackle, I must be honest, I had not heard of Fred Johnson before this year.
Me neither.
He sounds made up, but he's a real person. He had subbed for Lane Johnson at right tackle for the 2 games that he missed. And then he came in for Jordan Mailata in the game last week.
Yep.
He has not been good.
Nope.
You look at some of the Pro Football. Now, look, I talked to Dave Spadaro. He covers the team for the Eagles. He's very good. He knows his stuff. He said to me that he thinks he's actually done okay. But if you look at the metrics from Pro Football Focus,
they're not okay.
They're not okay. That is correct. I haven't sorted league wide yet what it is, and I'll give you that rank in a second. But he said 76 pass blocking snaps this year.
Yep.
Okay. That's over 2.5 games, the 2 for Lane Johnson and the half game for Mailata. In those 76 pass rushing snaps, he's allowed 18 pressures. That's a 25%, give or take, pressure rate allowed. And I'm looking at this. Other than A.J. Akruri from the Rams, so I guess there's a backup tackle for them who's only at 33 pass blocking snaps, Fred Johnson has the worst pressure rate allowed of any offensive lineman in football this year. 23.7%.
Yeah.
So I don't know who the Giants are going to put over him. I'm sure the Eagles will help with chips and tight ends because Dallas Goedert's probably not going to play, so they'll probably try to put a blocking tight end in there and help out on the Giants' edge rushers. But that's the matchup. And by the way, Landon Dickerson at guard next to him has not been really good this year either after getting his big contract extension. He's allowed 17 pressures. The difference is it's been in 190 snaps, not in 86, which is the big difference between the two guys. So I think you're going after the left side of that Eagles offensive line and seeing what you could figure out.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually was going to bring this up, so I'm glad you kind of set me up for it. That obviously things can change from week to week, but at least last week against the Bengals, Azeez Ojulari lined up on the left edge 77.5% of the snaps, which means if that were to happen again, that would make Azeez matched up against Lane Johnson for 77.5 or however many snaps, and would leave Brian Burns, assuming he plays, which he did not participate in practice yesterday, but he sounded pretty confident in the locker room after that he's definitely going to play. Mm-hmm. That would leave him matched up against Mr. Fred Johnson. So if that's the case, I would feel pretty comfortable with Brian Burns going up against Fred Johnson. As you mentioned, there's no way that the Eagles are going to just allow Fred Johnson to leave him out on the island, so to speak, and let him guard Brian Burns one-on-one, because I think the coaching staff is a little too smart to think that that is a good plan for them. So, Brian Burns will have to deal with some chip blocks, some tight ends helping, but still, I will take my chances on whatever snaps Brian Burns might get one-on-one with Fred Johnson. And, Lane Johnson, obviously, still a great tackle. I don't know how he does it at his age. Still really good. He's only allowed 4 pressures on 117 pass blocking snaps, according to Next Gen Stats. Good for the lowest pressure rate allowed from the right tackle position on the season, 3.4%.
He's great.
So I feel like there's a good chance that if the Giants, keep the same matchups, at least in terms of who lines up on what side as last week, Azeez is going to be matched up probably one-on-one with Lane Johnson for most of the game. And that's going to leave Brian Burns on the other side with Fred Johnson and whatever sort of help that the Eagles try to give him.
Yes, stopping the run is going to be huge. If you can stop the run in this game and get into those third and longs, then you can unleash the pass rush against the backup tackle.
Yep.
And that's going to, I'm sure, be the same exact thing the Eagles are saying the other side of the ball. So now let's flip it here, because both teams will be without their starting left tackle. We'll see who's out there for the Giants. They have not made any announcements, and I'm quite sure we're not going to know until we see who lines up there in pregame warmups on Sunday, because that's the way Brian Dable rolls, and we're just not going to know. It could be Josh Ezeudu. Matt and I both theorize that's who we think it will be, and that's what Brian Dable indicated how they would start. But I think there's a non-zero chance that they decide this week, when you watch all the guys play, that even though you're moving 2 positions, having Illuminor out there at left tackle, remember, he's played next to Runyon a lot in the spring when Runyon was the right guard. So they have good chemistry together already. So you don't worry about that part of him moving to left tackle. He's played left tackle before, and that would then give the green light to Evan Neal to be your starting right tackle next to Greg Van Roten, which I doubt those guys have had a ton of experience next to each other because Van Roten showed up so late in camp. But we'll have to see what they end up doing. I'm sure the Eagles, whether it's, Brandon Graham, whether it's Josh Sweat, who's been their best pass rusher, then you have Bryce Huff, who I don't know what's happened to him since he got there, because he's been phenomenal with the Jets as a pass rusher. And look, he gets to the Eagles, maybe he's not good against the run. I could see that. He wasn't great against the run against the Jets. He was a part-time player. But he has just 6 pressures at a 6.7% pressure rate according to Pro Football Focus. It is an absurdly low number for a guy that was one of the most efficient. He was over 20% pressure rate the last couple of years for the Jets. He's been phenomenal. So I don't know what's going on with him. But obviously the Giants have to be careful, and I'm sure they'll chip and they'll do the same things the Eagles would do to help out their guy, to give whomever their backup tackle that's in the game, whether it's Neal on the right side or Ezeudu on the left side, to give them some help.
Yeah, and when you look at this situation sort of in a vacuum, on paper, yes, you would think that if you could just switch or disrupt one position on the starting 5 on the offensive line, that's better than 2. Just in a vacuum, thinking about just not, I guess, the Giants personnel, but a situation for any team in general, obviously you would prefer to do that. However, let's not forget, at the beginning of training camp, when there was a lot of shuffling going along the offensive line, Greg Van Roten was taking snaps at center, the guards were taking snaps at different positions, right guard, left guard. Brian Dable made it very clear they were going to put the best 5 players out there, and they were going to figure out the positions then. So when it comes to this Sunday, and it might, honestly, we might see one starting 5 unit this Sunday, and if it doesn't really work, they could decide to change it for next week's game.
Matt, I could see if it's not working in the first quarter, I could see them making a changing game, to be honest with you.
100%. So I think that the Giants are going to do whatever they can to get the best 5 offensive linemen out there.
That's the vacuum I'm interested in, not moving 2 guys. I think the vacuum statement is the one you just made.
Yeah.
Get your best 5 guys on the field and figure it out.
Yes, and we obviously don't know between Josh Ezeudu and Evan Neal who is better at this point, because neither one of them have played. I mean, Evan Neal has not been on the field at all, and Ezeudu has been on the field for, I think it was 2 rushing plays all season.
And neither guy
an extra blocker.
And neither guy last year was very good.
Yeah. So I will say that there's been a lot of talk around the building and in the media that Ezeudu has taken a big step, even throughout training camp and throughout the first 6 weeks of the season, despite the fact that he has not been out on the field.
We got to see it, though.
We got to see it. And, we haven't seen or heard much from Evan Neal, obviously, because he just hasn't played. But those guys, this is their opportunity to step up first in practice. And then if and when one of them or both of them get an opportunity come Sunday, they need to step up. Like, this is their opportunity. Andrew Thomas is now out for the season. The Giants need to find someone to fill in, whether it's at left tackle or right tackle if Illuminor gets moved. They need to figure this out because the Giants can't afford to have sort of what happened last year with the offensive line once Andrew Thomas got hurt and the unit sort of crumbled for the first half of the season until Thomas came back, which granted there was a lot more injuries than just Andrew Thomas, but that kind of that was like the snowball effect. He went down first and then the other guys sort of started dropping after. But the Giants can't afford to have the line sort of fall apart like it did last year. Now, I will say I feel a lot more confident based on what I've seen from Carmen Brasillo and James Ferentz that will not happen.
And just, I think, a better veteran group on the line.
For sure.
I'm with you on that.
Alone, you have Illuminor, Runyon, and Van Roden, 3 veterans that are still going to be here despite Thomas being out. And Schmitz, who is, started to show signs of taking steps this so far this season. So this is going to be obviously a very, probably the biggest thing for the Giants to figure out. I wouldn't even say just this week, in the next couple of weeks. And they're going to have to figure it out in order to really, I guess, I don't want to say keep the season afloat, but sort of to keep the season afloat, because we saw what happened last year when Andrew Thomas went down.
And it was not afloat.
No. And so they're going to have to figure out, again, the best 5 guys to put out there to make sure what happened last year does not happen again.
Correct. It's almost 1 o'clock. I want to get to your calls here, guys, at 201-939-4513. So I'll just say this very basically about the Eagles' defense. I'm not quite sure what they are. They've had some good games. They've had some horrid games. 1 week, Jalen Carter looks like the next Chris Jones. The next week, you don't know if Jalen Carter's on the field. Vic Fangio is a good defensive coordinator. They got rookies back there. They got old guys back there. It's a weird mix. I think they're still figuring things out, Matt. So I'm not quite sure what they are. They mix up their defenses a lot. I looked at some of their coverage things. It's more single high than I think you would think based on what you know about Vic Fangio. They only played 1 cover 2 snap all year, if that means anything to you. But I'm just not quite sure what they are. I mean, the 25th in EPA per dropback, 23rd EPA per play, a little bit better against the rush. Overall, 26th in defensive DVOA over the course of the year. So they've had some struggles. I think you're going to have some opportunities here. This is not a dominant defense. You do not have those waves of pass rushers anymore up front. I mentioned Josh Sweat is probably their best guy. Brandon Graham plays less. Zach Bond's a linebacker that I think is interesting. He's played well for them this year.
Yes.
But, you have Darius Slay, Quinion Mitchell, their corners back there. Reed Blankenship, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They've mixed in Cooper DeJean now as he's come back and been healthy. So it's an interesting group of talented guys. I just haven't seen them put it all together yet. So I'm curious to see what that defense, frankly, looks like against the Giants when they take the field on Sunday, because I'm not sure what they're going to do.
Yeah, no, me neither. It's a little tough to say. I will say that through 5 games of the season, the Eagles have only 2 turnovers on defense.
Both a good one. I didn't realize that.
Both in the form of Reed Blankenship interceptions. Other than that, no other interceptions, no forced fumbles that they recovered. The defense, while looking at the numbers, their third down defense currently ranks 12th in the league, and their red zone defense ranks 5th, which obviously, especially the red zone number, that's great number. But when you look at the average plays and yards allowed per drive, the defense is among the worst in the NFL. They rank 27th in average plays per drive allowed and 26th in yards. So that's kind of confusing with their
they're all over the place. It's weird.
Yeah, it's definitely weird. I will say that I feel like they've had in years past a very strong rushing defense, but right now they're middle of the pack. They rank 16th in yards allowed, but 25th in yards per attempt. So I'm with you. It's sort of tough to figure this defense out. I will say that this is certainly not I don't want to say this because the Bengals defense was struggling mightily, and then they did a tremendous job against the Giants last week.
And the Eagles defense has been better than the Bengals defense.
Yeah. I will say, though, as we were saying leading up to last week, that we knew the Bengals defense was going to come out fired up and motivated. The whole players-only meeting, their season on the brink of falling apart. So their defensive performance last week didn't surprise me too much. I would be a little more surprised if...
Don't say it. Doing? What are you doing? Don't be the Tino. And I'll just say this. You mentioned the only 2 takeaways. Eagles are tied for 28th in the league with a -6 turnover differential. They've turned the ball over a ton. 9 straight games with a giveaway until last week when they didn't have one against the Browns. Hurts has 27 turnovers since the start of 2023 to lead the league.
Yep.
So you can turn him over. The Giants will have to do that.
3 of their first 4 games, they had multiple turnovers on offense.
It's hard to win that way. 201-939-4513. Giants Huddle Podcast. Is Recco up there yet, Pearson? So I talked to Jerry Recco. You must know him from the Boomer and Geo show on WFAN. He's doing play-by-play for the game on Compass this week. If you're not in the tri-state area for the Giants or in one of the cities where we have an affiliate, Compass has the national broadcast of the game on Sunday at 1 o'clock. If you can find that on one of the affiliates in your area. I know Jeff in Rhode Island always complains. Maybe someone has it up there. I don't know. You'll have to look that up. But we had a fun time talking about the He also covers the Cowboys. He does pre and post of them on Compass for their national broadcast. So we talked about the game. We talked about the division. It was a fun talk with Jerry, who I've known for more than 20 years from my time over there at FAN. So I had fun talking some football with him. Check that out in the Giants Huddle Podcast.
We do have quick injury update.
Oh, what do you got, please?
From Dan. Dan said that Brian Dable said Malik Neighbors will do more today.
Is the red jersey off? Do we know that?
Dan did not mention it, but some of the other beats said that Coach said he's going to practice fully, not wearing a red no-contact jersey.
All right, I like that.
So that is definitely, puts Malik's status trending in the right direction for sure for Sunday. And then elsewhere on the defense, Adoree Jackson added to the injury report with a neck injury and will not practice today. And Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns, again, will not practice. Ooh. Which 2 straight DNPs I don't feel great about.
Especially after Dexter said basically yesterday was a rest day.
But, yeah, they both did say yesterday that they are for sure playing.
I mean, Dexter said flat out, I'm playing.
Brian Burns did too. Both of them did in the locker room.
But, yeah, so, two straight DNPs. I'm not a huge fan of that.
I guess we have to wait and see the injury report tomorrow. As long as they get back on the field in some capacity tomorrow, I think that would put them in a good chance to play. If they're DNPs throughout the entire practice week, then I'm not quite as confident.
And then with Adoree, keep an eye on that. Remember, he's the backup punt returner. Smith Marset had to leave that game last week. Who would be your punt returner then if both those guys can't go?
That is a good question because Gunnar Olszewski is still on IR. Has not been.
Would it be Slayton's the next guy? Probably. Yet. He's been the next guy, right? Probably.
Well, Slayton's on the injury report himself. The whole Giants wide receiver room is basically on the injury report. They were all...
Slayton's on there with the thumb still? Is that what he's on there for? Or is he on there for something else?
I think it was something else.
Oh, actually, I have it right here. Hold on. I actually printed it out yesterday.
They were all limited yesterday.
And I'm like, I'm actually going to have it at the desk for the show so I can look at it. And then I forgot that I had it. Oh, here it is. I got it right here. It was groin. Okay.
Darius says groin limited. Wandell ankle limited.
And Singletary is... Did you see anything on Singletary today? Is he going to be back out there again?
Dan did not say anything about it.
I would assume he would be unless he had a setback. So, all right, well, check it out. We'll have the injury report later on today. Salamone will tweet it out. It'll be on Giants.com as well. Aiden in New Jersey will lead us off today. Aiden, thanks for waiting, man. I apologize. We had a lot to say today.
All right, yeah, thanks for taking my call. I know you're more like previewing like the Eagles now, but I see this as more of like a long-term thing. I was trying to get on Tuesday, kept getting the busy signal.
That's all right. What do you got?
All right, so here's my thing. Brian Dable, he's played some games very conservatively, like the Dallas game, and then suddenly, like last week, like he started being so aggressive, and like you're going for it on your own 38-yard line down 7-0, and like I truly do not understand it. Like it shows a lot that he has faith in the defense, held them up, but when Cincinnati got the ball back right away, like the Giants are very lucky that, I mean, the game could have been put away right away. And my thing is that the Giants have been in every game pretty much except the Vikings game. And I didn't get to listen to Brian Dable's press conference. I was wondering if you guys have any explanation on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty simple. Against the Bengals, Aiden, the offense had done nothing. And I think he thought and quite frankly, it proved to be true. In order for them to score in that game, they were going to have to convert fourth downs. Their only scoring drive, they had to convert 2 fourth downs. And I think in the Dallas game, for example, they were moving the ball a little bit better. They just couldn't score in the red zone. So I think he felt if they punted in that game, got it back, all right, I have faith that they may be able to move the ball. But against a team like the Bengals, despite the fact the defense was playing so well, I think he probably thought, all right, well, when all is said and done, the Bengals going to figure out a way to score some points here, and he was going to have to kind of keep pace with them, which is why in that particular game he was more willing to go for it on fourth down and be a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Gotcha, yeah, and I feel like even just based on watching the Eagles game last week, I feel like the Eagles weren't moving the ball that well, so I feel like it could be a similar thing, but like simply just going for it on your own 38-yard line, I don't get it. I see a big difference if you're down 1 score versus 2 scores in the place in the game you're at, so that's what I think of it.
I got you. I look, you go for it on your own end, out inside your own 40. It's risky, but I feel like he felt, this is my gut, that he felt the offense needed some type of spark because it had been, it was bad. The first half offense was bad. They could not move. They moved the ball on one drive. Otherwise, they were really, really quiet. And it was a 4th and short. I think that was a 4th and 1, 4th and 2, maybe? 4th and 2?
I think it was 2.
I think it was 2. And they thought they could get it, and he felt good about the play. And I think he just was trying to get some type of spark on that particular play to get something going. I believe you have something from the press conference postgame, right? What do you got?
Yeah, I was trying to find the quote. Because he was obviously asked about this. He was like, I felt good about the plan that we had. We were going up tempo. Defense did a good job getting the ball back.
I know he said it, but it's hard to win football games when you score 7 points. So he felt like you had to score.
Yeah.
So if that meant going for it on fourth down, it meant going for it on fourth down.
Yeah.
I think it's really that simple.
And honestly, I know obviously the first time they went for it on fourth down, it didn't work, but I don't have an issue with it. I mean, he won Coach of the Year 2 years ago from playing that aggressive style of football. And it was working, I guess, a little more often 2 years ago, so no one had any issues with it. We haven't seen it as much this year so far, but maybe this is a sign that he's going to be a little more aggressive moving forward.
I think it depends on flow of the game. It depends on the game, how the offense is playing, how your defense is playing, who your opponent is. All those things get put into that
Definitely.
culture.
I will say the defense this year, as solid as the defense was 2 years ago, obviously, at least right now, the defense is playing way better than it did in 2022.
Correct.
So that alone would make me think, maybe you play a little bit more conservatively then because you have confidence in your defense, maybe more so than you did in previous years. But yeah, again, I don't have issue with Brian Daboll being aggressive. It's what helped get the Giants to the playoffs 2 years ago. And I think in order for this offense to get to the point of where everyone in this building wants it to be, it's going to require some aggression.
Yeah. 201-939-4513. Marty and Manahawkin. What's up, Marty?
Hey, John, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
How you doing?
Hey, good.
Good, man. Hey, I was wondering if you have any stats do you have anything that shows how many times that Jalen Hurts runs a game, how many times he takes off?
Yeah, we have total rushing attempts. Matt will give you that. And I'm going to try to see if I can get a split here in terms of what's a scramble and what's a design run. Matt, why don't you go first here?
Yes, so through the first 5 games of the season, Jalen Hurts has rushed the ball 13 times, 13 times, 8 times, 8 times, and 14. So no less than 8 times per game and 3 games of 13 or 14 rushes. And in those 5 games total, he only has 1 game where he averaged more than 3.1 yards per carry. Now, a part of that is because some of those rush attempts each and every game are going to be the tush push, in which he only needs to pick up 1 yard for a first down or for a touchdown. But still, he only has 1 game where he's running more than 3.1 yards per carry, which I feel like has got to be a pretty significant drop from where those numbers were in previous years.
And it looks like only 11 of those 56 runs are scrambles. So 45 are of the design variety. Let me see if I can, I don't know if they have this. I can see if you could figure out if it's a quarterback sneak or not. It's a good question. I will look
Yeah,
that up. I'm not sure if I can find how many of those were quarterback sneaks.
Yeah, that's what scares me this week, though. I think we're gonna be probably keying in on Saquon a lot. That's obvious. And then you had that other guy Gainwell. He's not too bad either. But I think we got exposed last week with Burrow when he took off and ran the field for the touchdown. I mean, that's they might put something like that into their game plan this week, the Eagles.
Yeah, Shane Bowen said, and Marty, thanks for the call. He said in his press conference today that was a bad play call on his part on a 3rd and long to play man-to-man like that, and he wish he had that play back. And I think the Giants have to do a better job when they're in man-to-man of either being more disciplined in the rush lanes to not let the quarterback get out or have some type of spy on the quarterback, because we've seen now 2 straight weeks where the quarterback's gotten loose in man-to-man on 3rd downs. And Geno Smith had a couple big gains, and obviously with the big Joe Burrow run last week.
Yeah, you're 100% right. The only thing I will say is that going into this week's matchup, well, obviously just given the last 2 weeks, what you just said seems like it will be, a priority for the defense to keep an eye on. But just even overall, even if the last 2 weeks, Burrow and Geno Smith hadn't run like they did, it would be more of a focus for the defense this week regardless, just because of the fact that it's Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts is a much bigger threat to run the football than Geno and Joe Burrow are. Just historically speaking, obviously, again, 3rd in the league in rush attempts. The Giants' defense, any defense, expect Jalen Hurts to run the ball probably around double-digit 10 times a game, around an average of that, which is right around where he's averaging this year. Burrow and Geno Smith, while they obviously are capable of running the football, are certainly not known for being rushing quarterbacks. So I do believe that, even if it weren't for the last 2 weeks of quarterbacks having success running the football, slowing down Jalen Hurts as a runner would be one of the top priorities for the defense anyway.
So this is not going to be perfect, but Jalen Hurts has 19 rush attempts. So we figured out, 45 of his rushing attempts were design runs, right?
Yeah.
So it looks like I sorted by any down and distances when it was 1 or 2 yards, because I figured that's when you would use the tush push. Now, theoretically, he could have a run in those situations when it's not, in theory, right? But it looks like he has 19 rushing attempts when it's 1 or 2 yards to go. I'm guessing most of those are probably tush pushes, to be honest with you. Let's see if I do just 1 yard, what comes up here. I'm curious to see if it's the same or if he has any from that. So if it's just 1 yard, he is 15. So on 1 yard to go, he has 15 design runs. Those have got to be tush pushes. I'm assuming some of the 2 yards to go are as well. So you're looking at probably 5, 18, 27 or so non-quarterback sneak design runs. Around probably 18-ish. Again, this is just me doing quick math here if the PFF data is correct. 18 tush pushes and then only 11 scrambles, which is surprising. So he has not got out and scrambled all that much.
Yeah, well, I would love for that to continue this week because I don't want to really see Jalen Hurts scrambling and then taking off with the football. But.
And one thing, Dave Spadaro, I mentioned, he's going to be on the Friday game preview huddle. He mentioned that the Eagles have not defended Daniel Jones scrambling and running the ball well the last couple of years.
Nope.
So that's something to keep an eye on, too. We talk about the Barkley part of it. Hi, Charlie in Portland, Maine. I haven't talked to you in a while.
I know. How you guys doing?
We're doing
Good.
great, Charlie.
How are you?
I'm good. Hey, great game last week, right?
Not so much, Charlie.
J.D. Hill had his revenge game.
JDL?
Guess who's going to have his revenge game
BJ.
this week?
Got it.
Guess who's going to have the revenge game this week? Look, I just listened to Sal Palantonio of podcast, and he was saying this is going to be a Hurts-Barkley game. It's going to be like Lamar and Henry. They're going to run the ball. Hurts is going to run the ball. Barkley's going to run the ball. And when that's working, then they're going to, play action to Brown and Smith. So you're going to see a lot of running this week. At least he thinks that's what they should do, and he thinks that's what they're going to do, because he said they really need to win this game if they want to win the division. So he's saying, this is a must-win for them. So And the question I have for you, who's going to be worse? This guy Johnson or Zudu at left tackle? Which one?
Charlie, you laugh. I mean, I think which one of those backup tackles plays better could actually go a long way to deciding who wins this game. I don't have the answer for you. I could say Johnson's probably been worse than what Zudu has been over the course of the last couple of years. But, in this in particular game, I'm honestly not sure.
And just to your first point, I mean, isn't the Eagles' game plan just about every single week to have Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley run the football?
No, Hurts hasn't been running the football. That's been the problem.
Hurts is third among quarterbacks in rush attempts.
Yeah, but it's been mostly, 1 yard, 4
I mean,
yards,
we just gave the numbers. He's averaging over 5 rushing attempts per game that are not tush pushes.
That's 5. Big deal.
But then adding in the tush pushes.
Well, technically, Charlie, if you want to look at it, it's about 5.
Yeah, so that's nothing. He's going to do at least 10 or 12 this game.
Well,
I'm telling you, they're going to be like Henry, and they're going to be like Lamar. That's what they're going to do in this game.
And it's funny, Charlie, if you look at the Giants' rush defense the last 2 weeks, the numbers don't look good. 11 for 102 against Seattle and 20 for 121 against the Bengals. But so many of that, I think Geno Smith went for 80 yards, right, in the game against the Giants, and then Burrow went for
75 maybe.
So you're looking at probably of those 220 yards, 150 of them came from quarterbacks. And neither the Bengals or the Seahawks are teams that really want to run the ball. They're more passing teams. So you have to go all the way back to the Dallas game, and they're one of the worst rushing teams in the sport. The Giants were okay in that game, 3.5 yards per carry. So I think, to your point, this will be a really good test to see how far this Giants rushing defense has come, because I really don't think it's been tested a ton since that Washington game in Week 2.
And I will just say, in 8 career games against the Giants, Jalen Hurts has exactly 40 rush attempts. So exactly 5 attempts per game.
Yeah, well, I hope the Giants are looking for 5 because they're going to get a hell of a lot more this game. Hey, and the other thing is, I think Graham will probably be going up against Zudu. I think I like that matchup for Graham since he's a vet and he's smart. And Zudu's going to be doing olays. And, look, he's going to have a bunch of holding penalties, and maybe Johnson will too. I don't know. But if Graham goes up against him, it ain't going to be pretty, folks. And that's the problem. Look, I said this before. I said it in the summer.
Well, Charlie, they aren't going to leave Zudu one-on-one with Brandon Graham. I mean, if that's the matchup, they will not let him sit out there one-on-one against him.
I should hope not. But what I said in the summer, too, is like we needed a very good quality swing tackle because Thomas has been injured all the time. He's had 2 surgeries on his left ankle, and he was injured last year, and he was injured the year before. He played through it, but he was injured. And he's injured this year again, and he's gone for the season. They are criminal for not having a quality swing tackle on this team. Neal isn't the answer. They know that. That's why he's not playing. And you're forcing a Zudu who didn't play very well last year when he played a couple of games or a couple of snaps. I don't even remember how much he played, but he didn't look very good when Thomas was out. So this is on Shane, on Dable, for not getting a good swing tackle there. They should be bringing in Phillips. I don't know. I saw Phillips doing a video this summer. He was working back from that injury, and he's saying, I'm getting stronger, I'm looking good, and I want to play this year. They should be bringing him in and trying him out and see where he's at, because this ain't going to work with a Zudu. And if they move 2 guys and they take Aluminum and put him on the left side, and they bring in Neal, who is god-awful, that is going to make the O-line even worse than it is now. So,
Charlie, who's playing right tackle?
Oh, Neal.
No. The first one you tried to say and then gave up on the second goal.
No, Aluminum. I call him Aluminum.
Of course you do. Charlie, thank you for the call. Look, at some point, you have to trust your young players that you have on the roster to develop to play some type of role for you. That's why you drafted him. And, Tyree Phillips, could he be an option down the road? Maybe. I don't know. Could be. He's not from. I tried to find this yesterday. I do not believe he's on anyone's roster right now. I believe he's a free agent.
Still available.
But look, you can't spend at every position. They brought in all these veteran. They brought in 4 new veteran offensive linemen last year, if you count Aaron Stinney. 5 if you count Austin Schlottman. There's only so much money to go around, all right? You eventually have to trust your young guys to be a backup for you, and that's what the Giants are doing.
It's exactly what I was going to say. Like, I know anytime there is an injury or a certain position is not, playing up to the standard that people would hope, the immediate reaction is, oh, why didn't Joe Shane spend at that position in the offseason? They spent a lot of money in the offseason and made a lot of improvements across the roster. You can't improve and upgrade every single position every single offseason. It's just not the way the salary cap and free agency works. The Giants spent a 3rd-round pick on Azudu 2 years ago, a 1st-round pick on Neal 2 years ago. They're still here. They're on the team. They're their primary backups. Those are going to be your first guys up when someone on the starting line get hurt. It's like
they know exactly what Tyree Phillips is. Like, they know what he is from last year. If they thought he was a much better option, he'd be here. They don't.
And also, like, come on, we're going to bring up workout videos. Dalvin Cook has been releasing those workout videos every year for the last couple of years, and he hasn't done squat in the NFL.
I'll just consider this a win that he didn't want them to re-sign Will Beatty. I think that's a W for all of us. I think all of us have won that Charlie has finally given up that crusade. Mike in Florida is up next. Hi, Mike.
Hey, a question.
Sure.
You guys have always talked about having the least disruption on the offensive line when you're making changes. One of my friends has asked me this question. I'll pass it on to you.
Yes.
Is Neal so bad that you wouldn't put him over on the left-hand side, and that way the rest of the line remains in contact?
He hasn't been working there, Mike. That's the problem. Look, Evan Neal is a project right now, all right? He's been injured for 2 years. They were rehabbing him. I think what they're trying to do is get him good at the spot that he's most comfortable. I know there's a fan theory out there that the whole reason Evan Neal hasn't worked out is because he's on the right side instead of the left side. That's not true, okay? He played at the right side at Alabama. It was earlier in his career. It's not like, he's been there for 2 years now. He has full comfort on the right side. He's probably more comfortable than he's on the left side, given he hasn't played there in 2 years. So the Giants are trying to work him at that spot, get him good there, and they've worked Azudu in different spots, but he's been primarily at left tackle this offseason in the practices we've seen. He's had a little bit more position flex. But Evan Neal, a guy that you're trying to build his confidence and trying to get his technique right and get him ready to go at right tackle, I think the worst thing you could do for his development is say, all right, at the drop of a dime, go play left tackle, something you haven't done in a while. You have to reverse all your technique and your footwork. That, to me, if your goal is to rehabilitate this player and turn him into a good starter, doing that to him in terms of his development would be the worst possible thing you could do.
Yeah, I mean, Jermaine Illuminor kind of touched on this subject in the locker room yesterday because someone asked him, what would you prefer, to stay at right tackle or move to left? And he was like, honestly, I would prefer to stay at right because that's where I've been training for the last few months. If they need me to move to the left side, I will. But this is his words. He said, I don't think people understand how difficult it is to switch from one side to the other. It's not just like, oh, you just, do the opposite of whatever you were doing on one side to the other. It is very, very different. He couldn't even come up with an analogy to sort of, compare the situation to moving from the right side to the left side. But it is not something that is just easy, flip of a switch. You can just go from one side to the other. So to John's point, Evan Neal has been training at right tackle now for 2.5 years. You can't just immediately be like, all right, now go over to the left side where you haven't trained at all for years. That's not going to get the results that anybody wants to see.
Okay, got one more question, guys,
Yes.
if you got time.
Of course.
We have a new running back that has been converted from wide receiver to running back. Have the Giants incorporated a pass attack like they used to use with Barkley, where you're throwing out to the running back? I can't get the Giants games very often, and so I don't know much about what I'm asking you here. So I'm looking for new information on this.
No, yeah, look, I appreciate the call. Tyrone Tracy was very productive in the pass game last week. I think he had 6 catches, 57 yards, something like that?
He matched Darius Slayton in both receptions and yards, and they tied for the most on the team on Sunday night. 6 catches for 57 yards. And, some of them were sort of dump-off passes, but not all of them.
No, he had a couple angle routes in the middle of the field, stuff like that.
We saw I don't know how many plays, at least a handful of plays where Tyrone Tracy was lined up out wide like a wide receiver. And I fully expect for there to be at least a handful of plays each game that Tyrone Tracy is out there where he will be lined up at wide receiver, running wide receiver routes. Because obviously as a converted wide receiver, now running back, that is in his skill set. He's probably one of the better running backs, probably, is it crazy to say, in the NFL at route running? And
I'm not there yet.
Fair, but he definitely has the experience, more experience as a wide receiver than just about any other running back.
He has the
from college
potential to be one of the best receiving running backs in the NFL.
Yes, but he does definitely have the most experience, at least from a college standpoint, of running routes as a wide receiver, considering he did it for 4 years.
All right, I'll give you my quick keys here before we say goodbye. You'll get Matt's tomorrow when he's on with Paulie D. Look, guys, you have to score points. The Eagles, with all those playmakers, are going to figure out a way to get to 20 in this game. Score touchdowns. The Giants in 12 quarters of home football at MetLife Stadium this year have scored 1 touchdown. That's why you're 0-3. It's that simple. Go out there, score 3 touchdowns in this game. The quarterback's got to play better. Game plan what you have to do so Andrew Thomas's absence isn't killing you. The reason his absence killed them last year is that they had 2 or 3 spots where they had to help. So once you had Andrew Thomas go out, you can't help 2 or 3 linemen at the same time. Now you got to trust those other 4 guys can hold their own. Give the left tackle some help. It might limit some of what you can do in terms of getting 5 guys out in routes. You live with that. Run some more play action, some more quick game to give him a bit of a break. Try to run some play action passes on early downs to get the ball down the field so those pass rushers can't get off like you normally would if you're doing a run action play call. And we haven't mentioned these yet. Malik Neighbors looks like he's going to be back. And I think feature him, get a couple big plays out of him. You're going to have to hit a couple of those vertical routes in this game. Your longest play can't be 15 yards. Make 1 or 2 of those plays. Eagles have not tackled well either. Complete a couple 12 to 12-yard passes, get some run after catch. You're going to need explosives, and make the Eagles a passing team. If you can get them out of their comfort zone where they're running the football a lot, running play action, doing quarterback run stuff, where you're making things easy on Jalen Hurts, put them into 3rd and longs, I think they're going to struggle offensively to move the ball. So, and I think you'll be able to get home with Fred Johnson being one of their offensive tackles. So those are, to me, are the things you have to do well if you want to win this game. And I think the Giants got a pretty decent shot. I have not looked to see what the number is on this game, but the Eagles are more talented, I think, overall, but they've not played well this year. If you look at the both teams' DVOAs and stuff, they're right in the same area. Like, there's not much separating these 2 teams in terms of overall efficiency and stuff, offense, defense, DVOA, things like that. So it's a very winnable game. You're at home against an NFC East team. Look, it gets late fast in the National Football League. Got to start winning these games. Can't start the year 0-4 at home. Can't start the year 0-3 in the NFC East. Can't do it. Got to go out and win this game. You got to get to 20 points. You got to score 3 touchdowns. Look, Kevin Joseph's a veteran kicker. He's here. He's their kicker. Score touchdowns. Don't put the game in his hands. All right? Get in the end zone. Make some big plays. Quarterback play better. That's what you got to do here. That's it. That's all I got.
I'm going to go in more in depth on my keys tomorrow, but just very brief overview. Big 3 for me. Slowing down, because you're not going to completely shut it down, but slowing down the Eagles' run game between Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I'm on the same page there.
I think which backup left tackle can hold up more will be very big, because both guys that are filling in for, the all-pro starters, it's definitely a downgrade. There's no denying that. Which guy can hold up, whether it's the one-on-one matchups or when he gets help, doesn't matter. Who can hold up more?
And which team is forced to put more pressure on that left tackle because of game flow too, you know what I mean? Which goes back to the running the ball part of it.
Definitely. That is going to be key. And then perhaps the biggest thing for me is just, and you touched on this, the performance in the red zone. When you look at both the Giants and the Eagles, they have very, very similar numbers on both sides of the ball when it comes to the red zone so far this year. They're actually tied for 25th red zone offense. They both scored 8 touchdowns on 18 trips inside the red zone. And then red zone defense, the Giants rank 6th and the Eagles rank 5th. So far, inside the 20-yard line on both sides of the ball, these two teams have been very similar. I think which team can maybe sort of buck that trend on the offensive side of the ball
That's a good one.
while holding up the trend on defense, that could end up being the deciding factor on Sunday.
I'll give you one nugget on that before we say goodbye. And I texted this to Bob Papa the other day. And the reason for it's obvious, but I thought it was interesting nonetheless. So you talked about the Eagles struggling in the red zone, correct?
Yep.
Do you know what the Eagles' touchdown percentage is in goal-to-go situations?
I do not. Can't imagine it's great, though.
Third best in the league,
Oh,
84%.
okay.
Which I thought was interesting because you
Yeah.
figure if you're going to be bad in the red zone, you're not going to be very good in goal-to-go
They
situations,
just don't
right?
get inside the 10 then?
I don't have to I don't have the actual like attempts and successes. I don't know what 83% is. I'm guessing that's probably like 7 for 9 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think doing my quick math, I think that might actually be 7 for 9. So keep them outside the 10 because once you get inside the 5, you know what it is?
Tush push.
Tush push time, 100%.
And that's tough for any defense to stop.
So you need to be good between the 10 and 20-yard lines and between the 5 and the 20-yard lines. Do not let them get the same way Shane Bowen said with the tush push. There's no stopping the tush push, but there is stopping them from getting into 3rd and 1s.
Yep.
So stop them from getting into goal-to-goes. Stop them in the fringe. So that is interesting, I think, a little subplot when it comes to that red zone success.
Definitely.
Good stuff, Citak. We'll see you tomorrow. Big Blue Kickoff Live. Matt and Dots, 12:30. There'll more preview this game and more of your calls as well at 201-939-4513. Thanks for being with us today. We'll see you next time on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of your New York Football Giants.